Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. I am Ace, and tonight you're watching another episode of Tuesday Night Mania. Tonight, let me introduce to you the group that I have with me tonight. Number one, he's back. He's visiting tonight, Mr. Mess Around Dave. How you doing tonight?
I'm good. Just got off work like a couple hours ago, so I'm ready to talk wrestling with you guys. It's always good to be on here. So,
all right, and then of course we have Will from TRC. Will, how are you doing tonight, my man?
Doing better now. There for a minute, I couldn't hear anything. I didn't know what was going on, but I'm doing better. Just a busy Tuesday like usual. Super happy to be here, ready to talk some wrestling history and some other great stuff. So let's get going.
So I'm guessing you got us now. You're good. You're all good with the volume and everything. Okay, cool. And then of course, welcome in, as my son likes to say, Joe. How you doing tonight, my man?
You know, I'm doing good, guys. I was watching a little TRC tonight. Will had a really good show going on over there, him and Ben, and started playing some Madden here and was getting aggravated with that, so now I need to relax.
I like it, all right.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah,
so I don't have Madden 23 yet. I still have Madden 22 or whatever it was, the last one. But I haven't played one season on there yet because I can't figure out how to go play the season in franchise mode. Like, you have to do all that other garbage. I don't want to do all that. I just want to play a season.
No, you can go into the franchise and pick your team and skip preseason and go right into the regular season.
Oh, okay. All right, I'm about to try that. But this is last year's
2023, the new one I got this year, man. It's hard.
Right.
I don't have the new one. I didn't buy it because I couldn't figure out how to play last year's.
Yeah, just go in the franchise, play as a coach or a player, whatever you want, and then it'll tell you if you want to do the preseason or go into the regular season. You just hit regular season, and there you go.
Did somebody share this to TRC already?
I have not yet, so if you want to do that, you can go ahead and share it. We have Thomas Burnett saying, good evening, everyone. Thomas is in the house. Thomas Glenn is also saying, Chief in the house. And Thomas is also letting you know, Will, he's saying it was a great show, Will. So he's letting you know that tonight was an absolute great show. Oh, and look who's here tonight. We're just waiting for Big B. Big B's logged in. He's here. I'm about to pull him up on the screen here in just a second. And Thomas is saying it was shared to TRC. So you are good there also. All right. Big B, how you doing tonight?
doing okay. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Welcome to a fashionably late entrance. I'm just kidding. I got to give you a hard time.
Better late than ever.
He's not kidding.
Than ever. So.
He ain't kidding.
All right, and then of course we're gonna start this out the right way. So before we do that, Thomas Glenn is saying, "What's Madden? Just give me Johnny May and Moolah, and I'll put those up against Madden." So,
I've been buying Madden since I think the Sega Genesis PlayStation.
I've been buying Madden since 2000 when they quit making NFL Game Day.
I think I had it for the Sega Genesis, so that was probably mid-90s, like 95, 96, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get to it. Our first topic tonight, of course, is that little bit of the AEW recap. So, Joe, this always goes to you. So go ahead and give us that little bit of the AEW recap for this week.
Okay, so really quick, we now know we got new trios champions. We have a world title tournament after that debacle that happened at their pay-per-view. A lot of suspensions are in play. The guys don't know how long they're going to be out for, something that they haven't discussed with them. So now we're into a new tournament. AEW's banged up, and they got a lot of disgruntled employees there right now. So Tony Khan's got himself a major problem there. Other than that, coming off of the pay-per-view, I thought the show should have been better, but that could have been because of everything that's happened that they had to rewrite a lot of it. Moxley's had to come back from his vacation. So we'll see what happens now going forward.
Yeah, so speaking of that, because you were talking about the whole debacle, with CM Punk and the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and stuff like that. So now all these rumors are swirling that, we know that Kenny Omega knows people in WWE, but it's also been reported that, Triple H is very, very, he's 150% interested in bringing in the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega if they were to leave. Now, everyone kind of started freaking out because it said that the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega were talking to people. They know people in WWE. They're friends with people in WWE. That doesn't mean that they're in talks with Triple H or Stephanie. That just simply means they're just talking to their friends in WWE. But going to that, do you truly feel like if the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega were to leave, do you think you might see them in a WWE ring? So, Joe, since you watch a lot of AEW, I'll start with you on that.
Absolutely, and they would be good for WWE. I mean, they do have star power. It would definitely hurt AEW because those three right there alone are EVPs in the organization. So it doesn't hurt to talk to people. Like you said, all the wrestlers pretty much, they're all friends. Everyone's worked together at some point in time. They communicate, and if Omega sent out fillers, then so be it. So has MJF. So has a lot of other ones there that hasn't been heard about yet. So I think they would do good there. Honestly, I would like to see them there. I think there's some good matchups.
All right, Will.
I'm not a fan of any of them. I don't think those are WWE talents. The Young Bucks, not for me. Kenny Omega, I think he's made so many comments about, New Japan when he was there and so many comments about AEW. I don't think they'll ever take him. I think he's going to be your kind of like your throwback traditional TNA career guy. Like he's never going to make it to the big leagues kind of thing. He's always going to be a minor league performer, but he's a really big fish in the minor leagues. But I don't think he'll ever make it to WWE. And I think if he does make it to WWE, I think you'll see something along the lines of, remember when Dusty Rhodes was a 3-time world champion, but he went to WWF in 1989 or 90, and they put polka dots on him? I think that's the kind of thing you would see with Kenny Omega. Like he wouldn't be the same Kenny Omega anyway, so it's probably not something people would want to see.
That I agree with. I think they would have to really tone down their athleticism because there's not a whole lot of talent in WWE that can go that pace. And that's the only thing I don't like about what Omega and the Bucks do is there's just too much high flying, instead of mat wrestling, so to speak.
In my opinion, the Young Bucks have killed the super kick move. Like you can't look at that as a finisher anymore because it's basically 3 or 4 times a match, and it's not what it was. And you've taken a historical move from a historical Hall of Famer, Shawn Michaels, and you basically said this was never a finisher anyway, kind of thing. So I don't think you have the right fire for those guys to ever go to WWE. And if they did, they're going to be worse than the Bushwhackers. I think, they'll be a jobber team, and I don't think they'll ever be anything.
NXT might not be too bad for them.
But they're old.
Thomas,
they're old.
Oh.
They're not spring chickens like NXT guys. So I think, age starts wearing on you, And
I didn't realize that Omega's almost 40, and it's like, holy cow! I remember watching him when he was younger, but I didn't think he was that old.
No, they're old. They're not gonna go to WWE and have a second coming of their careers. I don't think they're not gonna pull the AJ Styles trick out of the hat. AJ had what it took always. He was TNA for forever, and if he didn't get out when he did, he would have been TNA for life. And then of course he had New Japan stunts and all that stuff, and then makes it WWE, and then AJ Styles is still a huge deal in WWE, and he always will be. But if he didn't get out when he did, he would have never made it to the big leagues.
100%.
So Thomas Burnett saying the Bucks and Kenny legally cannot talk to Hunter stuff, and that's accurate. But they've come out multiple times and said they have not spoken to Triple H. They have not spoken to Stephanie. They've simply talking to their friends that they know in WWE, which is legal because they haven't. All they're doing is talking to friends. They're not talking to any of the higher ups. So mess around. Would you like seeing the Young Bucks and Kenny in WWE if they left?
It'd be cool to see him there, but at the same time, it'd kind of be like when Bret Hart went to WCW. I don't think WWE would know how to use them. And they'd be like Joe and Will said, they'd be stuck on the main cards. They'd be jobbing, and it wouldn't be good for their careers. They might as well stay in AEW.
Yeah, because if you put them, who are you going to put them against? The Usos? The Usos would kill them.
Right?
I mean, think about it, you know?
So, Big B, how about you?
You know, it's one of those things, who needs who more? I mean, WWE doesn't need the Young Bucks and Omega. Omega and Young Bucks need the WWE to be. But I'm with Will, though. And Joe, I don't think. I'd like to see them there, but I don't think they would mount anything. I think their best bet is to stay in AEW, go to New Japan, Impact, heck, maybe NWA Power. I mean, that's where they're going to be. That's where they're going to be at for main eventing.
That's right.
NWA couldn't afford them.
You know what, though? I do definitely, Will, the one thing that I do agree with you on is, yes, if they went to WWE, the Usos, they would not stand a chance against the Usos. And number two, I don't even think they would stand a chance against the Street Profits.
Right.
I think,
but for the record, Ace, all I did was say they were never going to make it to the big leagues. You guys all demoted them down to the bingo halls, just so you know. So I didn't take them to the bingo halls. You guys did. I just said they're never making the big leagues.
right, yeah.
And I don't want a super kick party in the WWE between the Usos and Young Bucks, man.
Oh yeah,
right.
Michael Cole would have a fit.
I get it, and Thomas Burnett is saying, I don't think Jimmy and Jay would kill the Bucks. He's saying it would be a good match.
They'd make money because people would want to see it, but after you've seen it one time and 60 super kicks involved in it,
right? Super kick party.
It just becomes a video game at that point. Nobody wants that.
Thomas Glenn has the comment of the night so far. Bucks and Omega are cancer. If they were good, Cody would still be in AEW. That's his opinion. But I really agree with that, too. Cody made it to the big leagues, but I think Cody made it to the big leagues on his dad's name and on his brother's name. And then he left. He went off, did all his independent stuff, started AEW, and then went back. And he's done much better, of course, since he's been back. But, Thomas Glenn's absolutely right. If they were anything worth having and saving, they probably would have already been there with them.
Yeah, and you're talking about Cody, and you saw, the tweet that Cody made when he came out and said, he's like, now you know why I left.
Right.
And so he was making it clear. He's like, everyone was asking me why I left. Now you're seeing.
And his wife had a perfect comment too. She's like, I've kept my mouth shut for what?
Same thing with MJF though. If you put MJF into WWE, even though it's PG era, not PG era, they can't make up their mind what era it is. He's never going to be the same MJF. Not that I care for the guy at all, because I don't. But he's never going to be the right MJF that you're expecting to see in the WWE. That's never going to happen. He's never going to walk out there and get to cuss and everything else on the TV and do all that stuff. It wouldn't work. That's not the same package. You may repackage him, but again, when you start repackaging these guys that have made it on one gimmick, these guys have all made it on one gimmick. They haven't, had 10 or 12 different gimmicks and 10 or 12 different, showings in different companies where, you look at like the Macho Man Randy Savage. You had the original Macho Man, then you had the WWF Champion Macho Man, the Intercontinental Champion, then you had, the next version of Macho Man after,
Macho King.
Yeah, Macho King. You had the next version of Macho, which is like the mid to late 90s. Then in WCW, I don't know how many times Macho Man recreated himself. There was somebody that had multiple gimmicks inside of their gimmick. The Young Bucks don't have that. Kenny Omega doesn't have that. You don't have any of that charisma like that anymore that you did once upon a time. So that's kind of my thought process. If you put somebody like that over there, they're all getting polka dots.
So we
yeah,
have a
because
few comments.
MJF's not going to have his name because WWE is going to want to own it, you know, and so he's
Right.
going to get repackaged as Friedman Max or something.
You know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. Yeah, exactly. Freeman Max. Yeah, but then they're going to put him in that stupid gear that they put Karrion Kross in. Karrion Kross, in my opinion, especially at the first time they had him, such a tremendous talent, still is.
Mhm.
But then you put him out there looking like the missing member of Demolition.
Yeah.
Didn't do anybody any good. You know, all that bondage shit. Nobody could figure out what the hell was going on with that. So, of course, you give the guy a piss poor gimmick and you expect him to work it to the best of his ability, which he did. And then when the writing doesn't work out, you turn around and release the guy. Well, then he goes out and he kills it on the indie scene. You know, you put, and I'm kind of biased here because I really think highly of Kross, but, you know, if you put somebody like Kross in the ring right now against the ring from Kenny Omega, Kross is going to outshine him 10-1. Plus, I think this too. I think as a person, when you meet some of these people and you get to really understand, you know, talking to them and you get to see who they are, I think that goes a very, very long way. And I think people like Triple H are really buying into that stuff. They want people that are going to represent the company the right way. And these other guys that have bounced around and done all this other stuff, they're just never going to make it to the big leagues. That's the last on it because we're spending way too much time on AEW again.
Right. Here you go. All right. Yeah. Well,
Hey, I was short on my recap. Everybody else has talked about all the other stuff.
hey, yeah, we were just talking about the other stuff. But anyways, yeah, we can definitely jump into our next topic. So our next topic tonight is going to be who do you believe is, to you, is the top 3 most overrated wrestlers? And so mess around. Well, I'll start out with you on this one. Who is your top 3 overrated?
Top 3, I'd have to go with Buff Bagwell, Ultimate Warrior, and
What?
Psycho Sid.
What?
Okay.
So let me take Psycho Sid out and put Goldberg in there.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I will definitely. All right.
Comedy hour on the podcast.
Big B.
You know, it's tough because, I mean, and, you know, we get this debate all the time, and, you know, pretty much all our shows overrated. You know, you made it to the big show, you know, you're not overrated to a sense. You know, Goldberg, I will say, I mean, outside of his 117 whatever winning streak, I mean, he did nothing besides put butts in the seats, which, I mean, you know, and he's only got 5 moves, you know, and I'll put
5?
Goldberg up there.
What?
God, I don't know. It's been a hard list to think of. I mean, I know we got, you know, our topics a few hours ago. I mean, nobody rolls off the top of my head though as being overrated, you know, because, you know, I don't know. Maybe, you know, come back to me and see if I change my mind. But I don't have anybody really overrated.
You did. You put Goldberg on there.
Well, Goldberg,
That's the
yeah.
only one you got.
That guy's still
Goldberg-
wrestling 27 years.
That's what I'm saying. It's hard to
After-
make it's hard to make a list
after
because
it was
they
relevant.
made it up there. I mean, they made it to the big time. They made it on TV. I mean, it's tough to have an overrated list.
It is.
Well, yeah.
It is tough to have an overrated list. You're right about that.
Yeah.
But Goldberg still is wrestling today, where, I mean, I don't know.
Cool.
They're talking about him wrestling in
I
Saudi
don't-
Arabia coming up.
I'm
So-
saying, like, everybody knows I have never been a fan of Goldberg. I never have. So if you ask me, like, I will tell you that is automatically on my list. But another one
You
I
don't,
will
you
tell
don't like Goldberg?
what?
You don't like Goldberg?
He's never like Goldberg.
I never have. I've never been a fan of Goldberg.
I know. I'm just.
You might as well put Riddle on your list too.
No, I'm putting the Great Khali on my wrist, on my he's definitely on there. The dude's in the Hall of Fame, okay? So you definitely have to say the dude is overrated. He's in the freaking Hall of Fame.
Hold on. The dude is in the Hall of Fame because the WWE started touring in India and started selling out crowds over there. The dude didn't even go to the Hall of Fame. He did the Hall of Fame speech just like we're doing the podcast right now. So that can't count. That dude was never overrated. Nobody
That's the thing. I forgot he was in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he did it just like this. They were like, hey, you're in the Hall of Fame. He was like, oh, thank you. Great. You know, I mean,
thank you, WWE.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll listen to Will's top 3 overrated list.
Well, I mean, we've already covered half of them tonight. I mean, there's more than 3. There's probably 20 we've named off. But, you know, I mean, just alone in AEW, you got Omega, you got the Bucks, you got, I mean, just so many. But if you're to go back, you know, old school, how about 1998? I think we just talked about this the other day in our chat about Ken Shamrock, whether or not he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. You talk about somebody that was super overrated, but at the same time, you know, it really made no sense. Like, what the hell they were doing with him? Like, they couldn't figure out what to do with the guy. You know, he was a tag champ. He was an Intercontinental champ. He was a King of the Ring. And then he was a jobber to, like, everybody. I mean, everybody beat Shamrock at some point or another. Probably even Dwayne Gill, wherever he's at in this world right now, probably beat Shamrock at some point. And, you know, so I think Shamrock was extremely overrated. When Shamrock came in to WWF, it was humongous. Like, here comes a top UFC fighter, you know, and everybody was like, you know, the UFC is real and wrestling is not. So, you know, they're finally getting a real fighter in there. And he comes in. The best thing he ever did was referee that match with Bret Hart and Stone Cold at WrestleMania.
And that's exactly what he said the other day. He said if it wasn't for that special referee match, he probably wouldn't even been able to in the WWE because that was one of his greatest accomplishments.
Oh, I agree. And there was a lot of other overrated wrestlers. Like, you got to look back, you know, at some of the talents that were only there to lose. Now, and this is very unpopular, and I'm not saying anything about the man personally because he's won some major personal battles, but somebody like Hacksaw Jim Duggan, you know, the guy, Mr. USA, Mr. 2x4, the guy was only there to lose to bad guys. Like, the best thing he ever did in his whole career was when Yokozuna Banzai dropped him like twice and put the flag over him, like he was the American soldier. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, which that, of course, helped propel Yokozuna's evil career. But, you know, people like that, I'm not saying anything bad about him personally. The guy's a great, great person. But he was only there to job. And, you know, I mean, he won some belts. Like, he beat Austin for the United States title over in WCW in '94. But that was only because they were going to fire Austin. They were firing him. They were getting him out of there. So they got the belt off of him. So they put it on Hacksaw just so Vader could come out and splash him and take the belt off of Hacksaw. Like, there was no intention of Hacksaw ever being a champion, you know. So there's somebody that's truly overrated.
So we have a few comments here to where number one, Thomas Burnett is telling you Shamrock isn't overrated. So he's telling you that he disagrees with you on that. Thomas Glenn is saying Matt Cardona and Chelsea Green, and he said that's for Will.
Absolutely.
And put that other one up where Patrick talked about Triple H being overrated.
Yeah. So Clive is saying WCW, the Cat, Primetime, and Kidman, and then for WWF, Triple H because he married the boss's daughter, and then Steve Blackman and Tajiri. Huh.
That's an interesting point of view. So, I mean, the Cat was never rated. Like, you can't overrate the Cat because the Cat, Ernest Miller, was never really rated anyway. So, I mean, the best thing the Cat ever did was put on that football outfit and get the hell beat out of him and scream and scream and scream while he was getting
that was Norman Smiley.
Oh, you're right.
That was Norman Smiley.
You're right. That was Norman Smiley.
Cat put on the red shoes and acted like James Brown.
Oh, yeah. No.
I did see him. He did a match last week.
Norman Smiley is a level above the Cat just because of that, the funniness stuff that he did with putting on that helmet and the pads. Remember that? And Brian Knobs was beating the hell out of him backstage, and he was screaming and screaming. Like they had to take the cameras back to the arena because there was so much screaming in the locker room that they were like, we don't know what the hell else to do. That was pretty funny. So
I
can tell you,
And he got that gimmick over too. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
this was a very difficult question for the team and for the group because it's hard to measure that. If you were to say like who's the 3 worst or 3 best or whatever, that's a little different. But the most overrated, that's hard to do.
Well, as you're talking, a name that popped in my head, kind of explaining. What about Beefcake? I mean, because all he did was hold tag titles.
Well, I think the issue with Beefcake though is like Beefcake would have been at least Intercontinental Champion, but then he got into that accident.
Yeah.
So, like, there was a push there for him.
Mm-hmm.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe. Beefcake was going to take the Intercontinental title off Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam '88.
Yeah, and he got they did the injury angle. I just got done finishing his book up, which is a lot of misinformation in there. But he talked about winning it from Ron Bass, and he actually got injured. So from Honky Tonk, but Ron Bass injured him, which was a story to get him off. And then he was supposed to win it again at SummerSlam and got in the parasail accident, and that was kind of the end of that.
Right.
His bad problem was when he went to WCW, they could not use the Barber name, so that's when they gave him 12,000 different gimmicks to use. And
But
So
one of the best gimmicks they ever gave him that I thought, speaking of underrated or overrated or whatever the hell we're doing here, but when he was the Butcher, that wasn't a planned name. Bobby Heenan is sitting there calling this action as Hogan rips off the mask of Brutus, and Bobby Heenan's like, that man has butchered a friendship, and they were like, we don't even have a name for you, so we're just going to call you the Butcher. That was actually a really good gimmick that they could have done a lot more with, but instead they main evented Starrcade '94, had Hogan beat him, and that was that. But they could have done a lot more with that. When I watch back, like if you guys really, really want to watch some history and see some really cool stuff, go back and watch 1995 the Nitros. Most of those Nitros are only 1 hour long, so I mean they go like that, because the commercial breaks are not in them on Peacock. But go back and watch some of that stuff. Just that Dungeon of Doom alone was actually a whole lot better than I ever thought it was. Like I thought, it was a stupid gimmick and nobody believed in it. It was all cartoon characters. But some of those characters, if they would have just worked those characters the right way, like the Shark, prior to him being the Shark, he was the Avalanche because they couldn't call him Earthquake. But that was a really good character. I mean, that was a really good character. They had Kamala come in. They had Kamala come over there and come in. Kamala was always, of course, he was a jobber, but he was always a really good character. There was a lot they could have done with that, So I would really challenge everybody here, if you can find some time, go back and watch, even the first 10 episodes of Nitro. What I like to do is, like, I started the first, episodes of Nitro, and then it leads right into the pay-per-view, which the first pay-per-view after Nitro started is Fall Brawl 95. So then I watched the pay-per-view and kind of watched what was going on. It had a lot of stuff going on with Lex Luger. He had just came in, and, you even had a world title match with Sting and Hogan, and or Lex and Hogan, and there's a lot of really good stuff going on there. So I would highly recommend that. I know we kind of steered off course there, but talking about, Brutus kind of played right into that. But, Brutus as the Butcher was really a much better character than anybody gave him credit for. Now, when he became the Zodiac, we might have went a little wild.
So I'm going to get into a few comments here because there's a few of them up here that I like. And Kev Buckler, I'll agree with you. He said Disco Inferno is overrated and sucks. That is another one. Thank you, Des. Somebody else agrees with me that Goldberg is definitely overrated and never liked him either. So I'm glad somebody else agreed with me on that. Now, Clive, I will say I do not agree with this. He's saying that for WWE, it's R-Truth, The Miz, and then AJ Styles. I definitely cannot agree with the AJ Styles one. I think
I don't agree with the Miz either.
Yeah,
No,
definitely
He's been
not.
a comedy character lately, but let's not forget he was NWA World Champion. You know, and he beat Ken Shamrock for the NWA Championship. There's another
Yeah,
one.
the Miz definitely has talent. He definitely has talent. I love the Miz's in-ring skills.
He has earned
people-
his stripes.
Yeah, I think people don't like him because of his character, but that's who he is. That's who his character is. If you don't like him, he's doing his job. And so Miz is like one of those guys that he doesn't need a championship because he'll stay relevant no matter what.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially with R-Truth. R-Truth is, I mean, he's been absolutely phenomenal in everything he's ever done.
Oh, yeah.
Not only that, even his comedy stuff by itself has been incredible. That guy, he's one of those people that really should have won the big one at least one time. You know, I think it's
Also with R-Truth, he's the only one that made Brock Lesnar break character and laugh
right.
during a segment. That was great.
Do you guys remember back in like 2011, R-Truth come out in the uniform and the soldier uniform with the sword and all that? Remember that? Because he was seceding from the Union, remember? If you don't remember that, man, you go back and check out those laws going into, what did they call that event? Was it Capital Punishment, Joe? Back in 2011 when
Yeah, it
R-Truth
was
finally...
the
He
Capital.
finally gets his WWE World Title shot against Cena. Go back and watch the build-up for that. R-Truth is hilarious. And then, of course, all his takes with the Money in the Bank, where he would come out and start talking about the Money in the Bank, and they're like, "You're not even in this match," and he'd be like, "Oh, my bad, y'all." And he'd just
My bad.
That stuff was hilarious.
Did he do that for the Rumble too? He actually brought a ladder into in the match, and then
Probably.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this isn't a ladder match. My bad.
Yeah. I know he's a whole lot better than anybody gives him credit for, I think. So, and then Miz has always been really good. I don't know why Miz has never been able to sustain being on top. He's been on top a couple times, but for some reason he just can't sustain it, and I don't know why that is.
All right.
He's like Dolph Ziggler though too. I mean, Dolph has had a couple runs there at the top and just couldn't hold it either. But
all right, so we can
Miz
jump.
is far better than Dolph's ever been. Miz has a total package. He can speak, he can work. Total package. He's much better than Dolph. Dolph to me, I think, ruined his gimmick when he went with this Bobby Roode.
really,
Yeah, the Dirty Dogs.
I
Yeah.
kind of like the Dirty Dogs.
All right. Well, anyways, let's go ahead and jump into our next topic, which is because this has kind of been a topic of debate to where some people will say this is why I don't watch WWE because they don't allow blood. But then you have AEW, somebody like John Moxley, who basically bleeds every match. Like the minute you touch him, he starts bleeding. So it's kind of been like a hot button topic for a while. Is like, do you have to have blood to have good events? Is the question, which is why a lot of people are saying that I don't watch WWE because they don't let you bleed. I'm like, you don't really have to bleed. So, mess around. I'll start out with you on this one.
Yeah, no, I don't think you have to have blood to have a good match. I mean, look, AJ Styles puts on great matches all the time. He doesn't bleed. And Ric Flair and Moxley are two great examples. They always bleed when they have matches. I don't think it makes the match any better with the blood, but it also at the same time doesn't make it any worse. I don't think you need the blood though, to be honest.
Yeah, sometimes it gets too much though. Like if somebody's bleeding like every single match, it gets too much. Like if you're gonna do bleeding and blade and stuff like that, I get it, but it should be like once in a great while, not like every week you have that person bleeding every single week to try and make the match look better. That's just been my biggest thing. You have a match like Sheamus and Gunther. I mean, they killed it, and there was no blood involved in that match whatsoever. So, Big B, what's your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it gets, certain people like Moxley or Flair overdo it. I mean, but you come to expect it now. No, I don't think a match needs blood to, be a good match. I mean, if it's a Falls Count Anywhere or Extreme Rules match, then yeah, I mean, give me some blood, give it to me, make it look good. The one match that kind of sticks out to me, and I can't remember who he was fighting, but it was Vince McMahon. I think he cut himself bad, and they could not stop it, and he was just all beat red with blood all over the place. So it can get scary sometimes because you just don't know, if they did it on purpose, how far they did it. But I mean, you could tell Vince was really struggling to stand up and stuff, and maybe it was the gimmick, but I mean, he sold it good. But yeah, if a match is good, it doesn't need it. But if it's an Extreme Rules match or, then yeah, they got to throw it in there to make it believable.
Thomas Brunette would know the answer to that match.
Yeah,
He was
which
probably there.
Thomas Burnett saying blood is way overdone now, and it is. It's way overdone. So, Will, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, if we're comparing great matches and blood, I mean, you could take AEW's best match they've ever had with or without blood and put it against some of the main events in WWE, and there's just no comparison. So, but I will tell you that, does it make it better? Does not make it better? Sometimes does it add the right effect? Yeah. So back in 95, historical moment that's not even planned, you had the December 95 In Your House pay-per-view, Bulldog versus Bret. And, they had already had that tremendous match at Wembley Stadium in 92 at SummerSlam. And Bret was preparing for that match and wondering what he could do to make that match even better. So, in his own words, he stopped at the local drugstore and bought the necessary tools to make himself bleed in that match, which, of course, we know, obviously, with some razor blades and some tape to tape it up so it didn't get lost during the match. But, the blood definitely added something to that match. I don't know that match would have been nearly as good as it was without that. And then, of course, over time, you have had some bloody matches in WWE and WWF. Like, you look at that Austin, Stone Cold, and Kane match, that wasn't even – that whole thing wasn't really even planned the way it went because they had to go out there and figure out a way to overcome the match that Mick Foley and The Undertaker had just had at King of the Ring 98. And yes, it was a first blood match, but at the same time, if you had only had, just a little bit of blood in that match, it wouldn't have been nearly as good as it was. Like, you had people getting busted open in that match, and, you had to really bleed to lose the title. And, there's a match, King of the Ring 98, Austin and Kane, First Blood, never gets any credit, never gets any recognition. People mostly don't even know it exists because when you hear King of the Ring 98, you only think about Mick Foley getting thrown off the cell by The Undertaker. As a matter of fact, another jobber was very successful at King of the Ring 98. Ken Shamrock was very successful. So we talked about somebody earlier that was overrated, underrated, whatever. He won the King of the Ring 98. Most people don't even know that because what you remember is Foley and the Undertaker. So, but yeah, there were some times, and just for the record too, just for you, Ace, Bill Goldberg bled in every match he ever had.
So I do remember the match that you're talking about with Kane and Stone Cold in that first blood match because that was the match that Kane actually won and became champion and then basically lost it the very next night on Raw. That's when he held the belt for like one night. But Kev Buckler saying only match I felt that needed blood was Austin versus Bret at Mania, and that was kind of one of those. That was actually a really, really good match. And if I remember right, that was the one that Austin passed out. If I do believe he didn't tap, but he passed out. So Joe, what's your thoughts?
Well, I've been and Will knows this, I've been a fan since like probably 86, 87, somewhere in there. So, you know, you didn't get to see blood on television. You had to buy pay-per-views back in the day to get blood. And when they did show blood on television from a previous pay-per-view match, they would blur it out. So like Ric Flair, he did it really good, you know, in the main events, but that was the deal. It was a main event. It was meant to have that. WWE, when they did blood, you know, all of a sudden, I remember on the internet that night, they said they weren't going to do blood no more. And the pay-per-view was the day before, and obviously guys are bleeding like crazy. The next night they get hit with steel chairs, and they walk out with nothing. And it's like, as a fan, you're like, well, this is crazy, because the night before they got hit with that same chair and bled like a stuck pig. And tonight they're getting killed with that chair, and there's nothing to it. So I believe, like, AEW overdoes it. If one match is supposed to have blood in it, then that should be the only match. When you have it at the start of a show and then at the end of the show, it just takes away from that whole entire effect. I think gimmick matches are the ones that should have it. A steel cage, you know, somebody should bleed in that thing.
Yep.
A hardcore match, somebody should bleed. But there's been times that I thought it was too much. I can remember watching the AEW pay-per-view with Cody and Dustin when Dustin bladed. I mean, that was nasty. It almost made you sick to your stomach. So now it's just overrated. And I could tell now when people are starting to blade, you can see them start to put their hands up and things like that. You know what's coming next, or they're underneath the ring for 20 seconds. Or you see them when they got hit and they're sitting there trying to scratch their head like 6 times because they just can't bleed. But it doesn't change the effects. I think WWE will go back to it. You've seen a little bit of it, but they don't need to go back to it full time to make their matches any better, because actually their matches are getting better without that kind of stuff. So I just think blood needs to be involved when it needs to be involved.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well,
if the main event's having it, then the opening match shouldn't have blood.
all right. Well, we can definitely move on to our next topic, which is basically our historical moment, which is Fall Brawl 1996, if I do remember right. So, Will, I know you wanted to kick us off with Fall Brawl 1996.
Yeah, so we've covered several historical moments tonight, so I'll make this one really fast. The biggest part of Fall Brawl 96 is where, you know, it's only September and the NWO started in May. So you've only got like a 3.5 month time period there between when the NWO started and when the Fall Brawl happened. So here it is, WCW versus the NWO. Now, the match on paper is absolutely outstanding. I mean, if you look at it, you got Hall, you got Nash, you got Hogan, and you got the fake NWO Sting against, who was it? It was Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Lex Luger, and the real Sting for WCW. So the match on paper is just tremendous. Now, the match that happened in the ring, not quite as much. But it's definitely worth going back and watching. There's a lot of other good matches on that card as well. One that really comes to mind is Scott Norton and Ice Train. They were a tag team called Fire and Ice. Tremendous matchup between those two. Jericho versus Benoit. Both of them very early in their careers. Very good match. DDP versus Chavo Guerrero. Another tremendous matchup. The Macho Man versus the Giant. So why the Macho Man wasn't involved in that main event at War Games, I don't know, because he should have been on the WCW team instead of Arn. But for whatever reason, it ended up being Macho Man against the Giant at that event. But overall, really good event as a total package. The main event wasn't nearly as good as it should have been, although I never really liked the stipulations for Fall Brawl anyway. The whole send them in, you know, every 5 minutes send somebody else in. And then at the end of it, you know, once one person submits for one team, it's over. I never liked the concept. I thought they could have done an elimination style in the Fall Brawl, and it would have been much better. But, you know, overall, it was a good event. It could have been better, but I would still recommend going back and checking it out. the biggest thing they did on that pay-per-view and the build-up to that pay-per-view is it's like they almost put on loop, or on cycle, constantly reminding everybody how the NWO had taken over and coming in and just beat everybody's ass, and how Fall Brawl was going to be their chance, WCW's big chance to really take the NWO out in this cage match. And then, of course, that doesn't happen at all, like not even close. Sting finally comes in and shows WCW that he's still pro WCW, and he knocks everybody out and down and everything else, and he kind of walks out, and you don't see him for the next, 15 months until he becomes Pro Sting and faces Hogan at Starrcade 97. So, but there are some really good matches. And one thing that I've learned, when I was younger, I didn't have the patience for a lot of matches like DDP and Chavo Guerrero. Like, that's something that I probably would have recorded and then skipped over. But now, going back and looking, I like watching matches like that, because some of the stuff that happened in those, and even some of the commentary in some of those matches, were incredible. I made this comment the other day. I don't remember if I put it in our chat or in another chat that I'm in, but listening to Bobby Heenan call Steve Mongo McMichael McNuggets was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. He was like, "Back to you, McNuggets." Little stuff like that. You don't get that today. You really don't get that. And the comedy and the humor as a child, because I was a kid and a teenager listening to Bobby Heenan talk, I didn't really get it. But if you go back and listen to some of the stuff he said in the late 80s and early 90s on commentary, or even in the mid 90s to late 90s in WCW, the guy was hilarious, absolutely hilarious. You could almost put it on in the background and listen to Bobby Heenan talk and do your daily chores or whatever, and listen to some of the stuff that he said. So anyway, I know we're kind of straying off of the Fall Brawl 96, but definitely would recommend it. I was never a big fan of Fall Brawl, but if I had to pick one Fall Brawl out of all of them, that would probably be the one that I would watch.
All right. Joe, anything to add?
No, we've seen a lot of transition going into that Fall Brawl coming out of it. Obviously, we get the Sting character going. You stick with me, I'll stick with you. But everybody else, I turn my back on. You can stick it. And as a fan, I didn't know what was going on. I thought he was leaving. The War Games match itself, I agree. Like Will, I always thought, okay, War Games, and it was built by Dusty Rhodes to keep the Horsemen at bay all the way back at the Great American Bash. This is where War Games originated. And so almost all your War Games had some kind of Horseman in there. But I like Will's idea that War Games is meant for survival, is what they always built it as. Well, how can you survive? You're surviving if you're the number one entrant in there, because if you're a face, you know that the heel's coming in, so it's going to be 2-on-1 and so on and so forth. But work it backwards. Get all those guys in the ring, and then when somebody says, "I quit," they are eliminated. Then you can actually create a really mega star out of that whole thing, is what could have been. But that was one of Arn Anderson's final matches. He would go on to have a match with his final pay-per-view next month at Halloween Havoc against Luger. Then he would have surgery. His last televised match was in January against the French Canadians of Jacques and PCO. And then his career was over with. So, which was a shame, because Arn was one of those guys I always felt should have been a champion at some point in time. He had the tools for it. You got a DDP trying to figure out his character. He's still coming out with diamond earrings and all these rings and smoking cigars. And Eric Bischoff said it too. He was a walking merchandise stand. But that's overall great pay-per-view, and it's starting to build WCW's momentum into the future, as we would see it not too long after that.
But at that point, though, at that Fall Brawl 96 with DDP is only 7 months away from becoming a big deal.
That's what I'm saying. He, this whole Fall Brawl kind of, if you start from there and go forward, you start to see these guys, like you said, DDP and them start to move forward there. And unfortunately, we lost some superstars along the way there too. But
Right. Yeah.
it's a
All right.
to the Monday Night Wars, and that's a good
Big
way
B.
to start.
Do you have anything to add?
No, those two guys probably said it all. I mean, definitely. I always go back and catch a couple matches that Will throws out there from his historical moments, and he's never wrong. He's never there to disappoint. But yeah, I'll definitely have to go back and watch that Chavo and DDP match, and probably the Rey Mysterio Super Calo match, and Conan and Juventud Guerrero match. To really catch the high flying back then.
Definitely watch the Macho Man and the Giant.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of that, Will, because you're talking about Macho and Giant, I can only presume that the reason Macho wasn't included in that because he had that feud going on with the Giant, which I can't remember what started that. But you got two horsemen in there. You got Luger, who obviously deflected from WWE. So you got that, is he or isn't he? WCW, and then obviously we know the whole back storyline with the Sting situation there.
Well, they put Luger in that because supposedly, remember, it was Sting. It was the fake Sting, but remember, it was Sting that supposedly dumped Luger in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Luger's in that match. But at the very next event after that is Halloween Havoc '96, and the main event is the Macho Man versus Hollywood Hogan for the world title. So not having Macho in the main event at Fall Brawl was really surprising, even back then. And then not only that, but I don't want to spoil it for anybody because this happened like 27 or 28 years ago, whatever it was. But Macho Man lost to the Giant too. And then in the very next pay-per-view, Giant is NWO.
I knew it was something like that.
At the very next pay-per-view, Macho Man's going against Hogan in the world title, and then you kind of get the idea that they're going to start this big-ass feud between Macho Man going after Hogan for the belt. But at the Halloween Havoc in '96, Macho loses to Hogan thanks to some interference, of course, from the NWO. And then here comes Piper. So it's automatically Piper Hogan. And Macho
and then Macho's gone until January because his contract was kind of, remember that? The contract.
Well, Macho ends up turning NWO.
Yep.
So it just made no sense. Like you thought they were going to do this great big build where Macho was going to really chase Hogan, and you were finally going to. If you think back to WWF, it was always, Hogan was champion, and of course Hogan took the world title off Macho Man. You never really saw anybody beat Hogan, but you had the belief in WCW all the time that Hogan could be beat. And it definitely a missed opportunity, I think. I think they could have waited a little bit longer to bring in Piper because at World War III, which is the event right after Halloween Havoc, there is no world title match. There is no Hogan versus anybody. So you probably could have had a rematch at World War III of Hogan and Macho, and then you still could have built your feud going into Starrcade against Piper. But the main event of Starrcade '96 later that year, of course, is Hogan and Piper. So go ahead, guys.
Out here.
All right. Mess around. Did you have anything to add?
No, I didn't. I didn't watch it, but I'm gonna have to go back and watch. It sounds like it's a pretty good card. I really want to go check out that Macho Man Big Show match. So I'll have to look into that.
I'm telling you, it was only like a 4-minute match, but it was actually pretty decent, and I was really surprised that Macho Man lost. Especially with him going into the world title match the very next month.
It was 7 minutes, by the way, Will.
Oh, was it? Well,
that was bad booking all the way.
They're probably counting the entrances. I'm telling you, it went like that. I'm telling you, super fast.
In order for somebody to be a legitimate challenger, they got to be winning matches going into that pay-per-view or whoever they're challenging, and Macho wasn't. Plus, he was banged up anyways. But to lose 2 pay-per-views in a row didn't make a whole lot of sense to me either.
You ever notice in WCW, Macho Man is multiple time world champion, but all of his reigns are like super short?
I think I added it up one day when we talked about that. He held the title 3 times, I think, for a little over 30 some days in WCW anyways.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at that point in time now to where we're at the very end of the show to go ahead and do our final thoughts and our recap. So, mess around. What you got for us?
Always a pleasure being on here. I'm look forward to next week coming on and talking more wrestling with you guys.
I need you. She's about to get in a fucking cat fight.
All right. And then and
All right.
all right, and then Big B, your final thoughts for us.
No, sorry I was late, guys. I misread the time, but always good to get on, talk wrestling, listen to Will, bring back childhood memories on matches. I'll definitely have to go back and watch. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and check us out next week.
All right, and then I'll go to Joe next. Joe doesn't like to follow Will, so I'll make sure that this time Joe gets to go first.
I don't mind following Will because Will wraps up everything that we forgot to say. But that cat fight sounds interesting, though. Jerry Lawler and Joey Styles used to say, cat fight. Holy cow, was it a cat fight with women? Woo-wee. That might be interesting. You might make some money there. No, guys. Great night, as always. I enjoy talking about wrestling. Some of the stuff I remember, and then we got like Thomas who comes in and tells us, and Chief comes in and tells us things that we forgot. That's always great because I said I couldn't remember the War Games. I was reading that comment there, and now I start to remember it afterwards. But always fun. We debate this like we do sports, but that's why we do it, because we're fans of it.
Yep.
Most
Absolutely.
important. So, as always, thank you guys. I'm going to say a shout out to, can't say Crispy B tonight because he didn't do it.
Yeah,
Shout
Chris, you're not here.
Shout out to you tonight, Ace. You holding down the fort for us.
No problem. All right. Will,
Hey,
how about
seeing
you?
those guys. Thanks, guys.
I'm still wondering why we're not streaming this cat fight.
Sorry about that, guys.
She had pretty good commentary there too. I mean, that's ECW style right there.
Yeah. That kind of it just blew me off my thought. I never know if it's like somebody's phone, like somebody's YouTube.
Leave
or
it to
something.
Dave.
At the
All
mute or-
I'm picturing is Don Marie and Francine rolling around in the middle of the ring, hoping that somebody's top's going to fall off.
Yep.
Yeah,
So, huge thank you to everybody. Huge shout out to TRC, all the support over there. Huge shout out to Thoughts Count Anywhere on Saturdays at noon. We broadcast it on TRC. Chief, Thomas Glenn, Aaron Phillips, all those great guys, Thomas Burnett, all those guys. Anybody that tuned in tonight to listen to us, join in, all that stuff. We still need to get more interactive. We still need to get more people in here. Guys, you guys are always welcome to join, and anybody watching, listen to us, always welcome to join. Thank you to everybody. Huge shout out to our good friend Crispy Bacon, who has started a new job and has got a lot of things going good for him. So huge shout out to him. We definitely miss you, and we look forward to you getting back with us here as soon as possible. So that's all I got, guys. Thank you all so much, and have a great night.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you to all of our viewers for watching that. It always makes it easier when you're commenting on the show. It definitely makes it easy. It makes it really interactive. We really enjoy that. So for all of you, just let us know. I think we've had a few people already reach out to us saying that they wanted to join the show. We definitely want more. So if ever you want to do that, hit us up. We'll make it work. So with that, we hope everybody has a fantastic night. And tomorrow we have a whole bunch of shows going on for you tomorrow. The Bo and Joe show's back. There's Sports Minute tomorrow. We just have a whole lineup. So with that, everybody have a fantastic night, and we will see you next Tuesday for another episode of Tuesday Night Mania. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Cat fight.
Meow.